Thank you for joining us today. Like to welcome a special guest, Brandon Ogilvie. He's the CFO of All Points Broadband. Brandon, thanks for joining our conversation today around financial transformation.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
We're going to dig in a little bit about what you and All Points are dealing with in today's marketplace. But before we get started, it'd be really helpful to just kind of unpack what or who All Points Broadband is, and then we can get a little bit into who you are and why you joined.
Certainly. So All Points Broadband was formed in 2014 with the mission of delivering high quality broadband internet access to unserved and underserved people living in rural markets. And during the first 5 or 6 years of the company's existence, the company built a very stable, robust platform and service in the Mid-Atlantic region, serving primarily Virginia, Kentucky, with some customers in West Virginia and Maryland as well, using predominantly fixed wireless technology to deliver internet data service to our customers.
No, that's great. And you've joined All Points Broadband in the last 18 months, and you have a pretty interesting background. So what is it that drew you back into the infrastructure and broadband space, and specifically, what's the opportunity that you saw with All Points?
Yeah, so as by way of background, I started my career originally undergrad as a civil engineer. So I always have been attracted towards infrastructure projects. Did return to get my MBA about midway through my career, and after that, I entered the renewable energy industry in about the 2008 timeframe, where I worked for about 8 years on large infrastructure projects, but on the finance side, and really had a passion for those infrastructure projects. I switched industries in the 2016 timeframe, but this opportunity with All Points came along in 2021, and I jumped on it. I really liked what they were doing. It had that appealed to my personal preference for large infrastructure projects, and happened to know some of the original founders and principals of the firm. And so it was overall a good fit for me when I decided to join last year.
Yeah, and we hear that a lot these days of folks coming and being drawn to this kind of mission-driven work to really help the underserved and unserved space and bring those talents from other markets into the space. So appreciate that. With that, there's a lot going on, right? So there's what we're seeing in the marketplace, these really aggressive schedules to build out and get service to these markets and communities that have been lacking for many years. But with that, what we're seeing is network operators coming to the market with ideas about how do you do this with a focus on reducing operation expense, right? Trying to find ways to build sustainable, affordable capabilities that last 10, 20, 30 years, as well as focusing on reducing complexity, be it on the IT system side, as well as on the business process and operational side, looking at ways to consolidate processes, adopt standards so that you have the efficiencies and the ability to do more with less, right? And I know you guys have kind of embodied some of those concepts, but right, what I'd like to start with is your aggressive plans to grow and transform. Can you give us a little bit of an update of kind of where you guys are and kind of next steps?
Certainly. So beginning several years ago, even before COVID occurred, the Commonwealth of Virginia put in place several pieces of legislation to ultimately designed to close that digital divide, where the rural markets that are unserved and underserved, that Virginia created several special programs to help businesses such as ours partner with the local counties and municipalities to be able to fund wireline improvements. So wireline-based broadband, which is predominantly fiber optic-based broadband. So beginning in 2019, we were working with several localities, and then of course COVID hit, and that has just accelerated and expanded the amount of resources that the federal government and the state governments have made available in this space. But we had started that transition and focus on pivoting from a fixed wireless operation to a fiber operation back in 2019. Fast forward it to now, the amount of growth that we anticipate is significantly larger than what we had first envisioned would have been feasible back in 2019 before this additional funding was made available through the American Rescue Plan and more recently BEAD. That growth caused us to then look internally at our own systems and our infrastructure and our business processes. And when we evaluated what we had put together on the fixed wireless side, while we're using an industry standard billing platform and an industry standard accounting ERP system, they didn't talk to one another. And in the billing platform, it really focused on billing and had some ticketing and field dispatch capabilities. But we as a company had developed a number of homegrown solutions kind of wrapped around these systems to really enable our field personnel with information on their cellular devices that are out there doing home installs or working on a radio tower to repair it.
Right.
As we're looking ahead to what's coming down the pipe with our pivot and focus now in these rural fiber deployments, it became pretty apparent to us that the scale of growth meant that we needed to focus on that growth and not on expanding and continuing to develop these homegrown internal systems to support scaling up the enterprise. And so that led to us searching back in mid 2021, starting to search for an out-of-the-box solution that could handle our range of needs from start to finish.
No, that's helpful.
Yeah.
Okay. So kind of where are you on that adoption of, I know you've been a customer for us with us since January, taking that platform approach, but you guys have done it in a kind of a sequential way. I mean, so can you give us a timeline of the adoption that you guys have taken and where you see it going?
Yeah, certainly. So we started the search in the spring of 2021. We evaluated about half a dozen platforms, and each platform has its strengths and weaknesses. There's a number of good platforms out there. What attracted us to the ETI solution was that it was based in the Microsoft Dynamics architecture. The hosting was provided by Microsoft, and it included not just your classic OSS BSS functionality, but it also included the full ERP solution that Microsoft provides called Business Central, which is its middle market accounting ERP system. So by late summer, we had made the decision to engage with ETI on a full soup to nuts implementation, not just OSS BSS, but also field service modules, marketing modules, worked with ETI and integrating with our preferred merchant processor and also on the accounting system. With this, we timed it so that we engaged with ETI, and in the September-October timeframe, by January 1, we were live on the ERP system in Microsoft Business Central. So we rolled out first and foremost with the accounting software, in part timed to match our fiscal year end. Okay. But we launched with that component of it because we really wanted to have all the building blocks in place so that once the various modules within the OSS BSS as billing and field service came up, they had a place to automatically synchronize and record the transactions, the financial transactions that are occurring in the OSS BSS side to be able to record it in the accounting system automatically on day one of bringing up those systems.
Yeah, no, that's great. And you mentioned a couple things. So payment processing, you guys have some interesting thoughts on your processing. What are the things that you think about in terms of kind of where current and future payment processing capabilities are right now in this market? When we first started working with ETI, there were a couple payment processors that ETI had been working with prior to us coming along. What we're finding, and in this space where there's going to be a lot of project finance involved, which means working with banks as lenders, those lenders in the project finance space, they often will also stipulate that you will
use them for treasury services. You will use them for your merchant processing services. And so in some discussions with ETI and bringing them up to speed on what was happening and evolving in the project finance space, it became pretty apparent that whether it was All Points Broadband or any of ETI's other customers, that they're probably going to come to the table and say, I need you to use this merchant processor, because of not the merchant processor relationship in particular, but because it's part of a broader banking relationship that ETI's clients have. And so with that, working with the ETI personnel and senior management, they went through the review and evaluation, and they recognized that this was probably going to be a need. And even though it represented an architecture change for them, they proceeded with implementing this change. And I believe now that the solution that has been implemented gives ETI the flexibility to integrate with basically most any merchant processor out there.
Right. So you're coming up on about a year of your decision process, right? It's been I'm sure, a crazy journey, highs and lows. What are some of the key lessons learned that you can share with our listeners?
Well, I think the sequencing of bringing up the accounting system first was a strong benefit. Because of the data that's passed back and forth, I think early on in the process, a valuable exercise is to understand those relationships and to work with ETI to really understand the relationships between each of the components and modules and how they're ultimately going to interact. So whether it's interacting in terms of how GL accounts are passed back and forth, or item and inventory codes are passed back and forth, coming up with a standardized structure and approach early on can save a lot of redos or restarts down the road.
And for non-financial leadership that may be listening to this, trying to help them understand, to help guide their finance teams, what should folks start doing now? It's kind of late fall, you got year end, the close kind of things in terms of helping them understand the system evaluation. What can they start doing tomorrow to kind of start moving in this direction? Any suggestions?
I mean, are you asking from the standpoint of if someone out there is evaluating the system for the first time?
Yeah. So, you're the liaison to the CEO and to the board and those folks. And in your role, what if if somebody knew these three things that would make your life easier, what would that look like?
So this type of solution affects every department within the company. Getting stakeholder involvement by creating a multidiscipline interdepartmental team of internal personnel who represent each department, but who are also influencers and drivers in each area is critical. Because anytime you overhaul your back office systems like this, you're also overhauling all of your business processes and how those human beings interact with those systems and how they go about doing their day-to-day business. And so getting in place that multidisciplined interdepartmental team is key. Mapping out the business process flows of what you do today, and then work with ETI. And I found that working with the ETI team, these are a lot of smart, passionate, hardworking individuals. They've taken business process flows of ours, looked at them and said, okay, using our solution, this is how we recommend you tweak your flow and you update your flow to get the maximum utility out of the system, which is processing efficiency, accuracy, minimizing the amount of human machine interfaces, and automating as much as possible a lot of the steps within those processes, which ultimately lead to a better result and a better customer experience. So I would recommend pulling together and getting those processes, and then having that dialogue with ETI to really understand how the environment that they set up for you is going to meet the needs of the organization and ultimately the customers.
No, that's great. That's very helpful. And I want to thank you. I know we're out of time, but I really appreciate it. It's been an enjoy working with you guys for the last 12 months. Looking forward to maybe getting you back in a year's time and kind of figure out where you guys are and keep sharing and building that community. So thank you for your time, Brendan.
Oh, you're very welcome, Pete. Thank you.